15 secrets pilots don't want you to know. When you board a plane and fly across numerous countries, there are some things that happen within the cockpit you'll never hear on the public address system. From why oxygen masks will last for a short period, to why pilots fly different planes. Here are 15 aviation secrets that'll change your perspective on flying. Secret 1. Oxygen masks don't last for a long period. If the plane's cabin loses pressure, those yellow oxygen masks will automatically come down for passengers to use. But there's a kicker. These masks provide around 10 to 14 minutes of breathable oxygen. You might think this is a short period. However, it provides just enough time for pilots to descend to 10,000 feet, a height where you'll be able to breathe normally. Summarily, oxygen masks won't last forever. They're available to ensure you breathe during those critical in-flight minutes. Secret 2. Pilots sometimes fly when they're sick. At first, you might be enraged by this secret, but hear us out for a second. According to aviation rules, pilots must be physically sound to fly an aircraft. If they're seriously sick, they won't step into the cockpit. If they've got a mild cold or fatigue minutes before takeoff, chances are they won't call in sick. You see, canceling a flight before takeoff can be disruptive as replacements aren't always available. Due to these circumstances, pilots will definitely fly the plane if they feel that their illness won't impact the flight negatively. This goes to show that just like regular people, pilots work through minor discomfort from time to time. Secret 3. Some runways are harder to land at. Landing at some airports around the world is an activity that takes the utmost concentration and skill, and pilots know this. Top mentions include the Princess Juliana Airport in St. Martin and Tenzing Hillary Airport in Nepal. These challenging airports have short runways and unpredictable weather. So, when next you land safely at an airport deemed to be challenging, chances are the pilots manning the flight have undergone rigorous tests to ensure safety on that route. Sometimes, moving from point A to B might be easy, while the actual challenge for pilots lies within the runway itself. Secret 4. Fuel planning is science. Every flight is fueled to suit precise calculations. Metrics involved in these calculations include distance, expected weather conditions, and plane weight. What's more, regulations demand that each plane should have reserve fuel that can aid diversions to other airports in case of an emergency. From time to time, air traffic control will hear pilots declaring a fuel emergency or minimum fuel. Either declaration doesn't translate into the fuel tank being empty. Rather, they arise when pilots realize that they've dipped into their legal reserve. When this happens, landing takes priority. Secret 5. Pilots don't like red-eye flights. If you don't like overnight flights as a passenger, imagine how the pilots overseeing one feel like. It's challenging for these aviation professionals. Why? Flying late at night affects sleeping cycles. As such, being alert all through might be difficult. Thankfully, most airlines around the world have strict rules regarding fatigue, so they ensure their pilots utilize strategies like rest breaks and caffeine intake to remain sharp all throughout the flight. Secret 6. Pilots and cabin crew stay in different hotels. During layovers, you might expect the pilot and cabin crew members to check into the same hotel, right? While this is the case for some airlines, others don't go this route. The latter set usually checks pilots into quieter hotels to aid rest. And conversely, the cabin crew will be checked into any other hotel. This structure goes to show how seriously some airlines take rest requirements for those flying their planes. Secret 7. The cockpit is locked down during a flight for good reason. Ever since the unfortunate 9/11 attacks, cockpits on planes remain sealed during a flight. Typically, these doors can only be opened by a code that only the pilots know about. Even if someone should knock, pilots won't let them in until they've been screened to ensure they don't pose any threat. While this might seem like an extreme protocol, it's in place to ensure pilots remain focused on one thing only: flying. Secret 8. The seatbelt sign doesn't always signify turbulence. When you hear the ding sound, you might feel that there's turbulence ahead, but that isn't the case most times. Pilots could turn it on when they're changing altitudes and want all passengers tucked in place. But while turbulence remains the major reason for the seatbelt light coming on, it could also be activated by pilots for prevention instead of reaction. Secret 9. Pilots don't eat the same meal. This secret might seem like one straight from the movies, but it's 100% true. Many airlines have strict policies that mandate their pilots not to eat the same meal. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. If one meal leads to food poisoning, the other pilot won't be affected. Although the chances of food poisoning or any other food-related illness happening to two individuals simultaneously are rare, aviation is all about planning for all possible scenarios. As such, it's not surprising that some pilots bring home-cooked food to steer clear from in-flight food altogether. Secret 10. Pilots hate delays. Nobody likes waiting on the ground more than they should. This includes pilots. Why? Even the tiniest disruption can impact their schedule and how many hours they work legally. Sometimes, delays can even prompt them to time out, meaning replacements will be brought in to handle the flight. Delays caused by bad weather or mechanical issues are understandable. However, it gets infuriating for pilots when they're delayed due to catering issues or passengers running late. So, the next time you're losing your mind about a delay, just know that the pilots feel the same way. They don't just complain over the PA system. Secret 11. Pilots' views aren't perfect. When you sit by the window, you might think that pilots can see everything from the cockpit. However, this assumption is far from the truth. For context, the plane's nose blocks the view ahead while it's still on the ground. Successful taxiing on runways is reliant on ground markings and clear instructions. At night and in poor weather conditions, pilots use more instruments rather than their eyesight. Although the cockpit's window helps for visibility, they don't give the full picture. Secret 12. Go-arounds happen more times than you actually think. You feel the plane descending, but all of a sudden you notice that it makes a sudden climb before another landing attempt is made. This is called a go-around, and it happens more times than you might realize. Pilots perform go-arounds for a slew of reasons. It might be done due to bad weather, another plane being on the runway, or simply because their landing angle wasn't perfect. Go-arounds aren't dangerous. Rather, they're a safety move. Pilots would rather do it than risk a forced landing that's dangerous for the plane and those on board. Secret 13. Pilots have strict rules concerning alcohol consumption. One thing most people might not know about is that pilots aren't allowed to consume alcohol before their flights. According to the FAA's bottle-to-throttle rule, pilots mustn't consume alcohol 8 hours before a flight. Additionally, pilots can't have a blood alcohol content of 0.04% or more and fly a plane. Secret 14. Pilots aren't allowed to make small talk during takeoff and landing. The cockpit might seem like a place where pilots can have conversations about their general lives. While this is possible, there are strict regulations concerning small talk within the cockpit. Per the sterile cockpit rule, pilots can only discuss things concerning the plane when they are below 10,000 feet. This means that there's no room for small talk and casual jokes at this height. If a pilot flouts this rule and is caught, they could be temporarily or permanently suspended by the airline. Secret 15. Pilots don't always fly the same plane. Passengers usually think that pilots are tied to one aircraft. However, this isn't the case. The reality is that while pilots are trained to understand the operations of a specific type of aircraft, for example, the Airbus A320 or Boeing 737, They don't fly one individual plane all through their careers. On each flight, they're assigned to any aircraft in the fleet. That's why pilots must always conduct pre-flight checks before flying a plane. Why? Because while it's an aircraft model they're familiar with, it's most likely the first time they're flying that exact airplane. Flying might seem routine for pilots, but behind the cockpit is an array of strict rules, processes, and little details that passengers may never know about. From oxygen masks that last about 10 minutes to pilots not flying the same plane. These secrets outlined in this video just goes to show how much planning and discipline goes into ensuring that flights remain safe. Did you enjoy this video? If yes, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.